Yeah, and you bring up the schedule, and I ranked it the second most difficult schedule in America, even though the Power 5 non-conference games aren't brutal like they have been in the past with the likes of Wisconsin home and home or near home and home with Syracuse and BYU. But in conference, it's probably the most difficult draw you can get because you play in the toughest division in college football. There is no Rutgers like the Big Ten East, and that's the comparison I make. So I give the substantial nod to the SEC Western Division being the best division in college football. Then you've got the Florida and Tennessee on the road draw, and that's about as difficult it gets on the other side. So it's a gauntlet. That's no question about that.
So, Mark, first of all, I'm curious, who do you have as the most difficult schedule in college football?
It's Florida.
Florida.
I've got Florida.
Still in the SEC, and of course, Florida's got to play Michigan and Florida State, so that makes sense. Consider LSU's non-conference. They opened with BYU, neutral site. BYU lost 4 games last year by a combined 8 points. That's going to be a tough game. It's not Florida opening up with Michigan, but it's tougher than on face value it might seem. Chattanooga is a ranked FCS team. LSU will have no trouble winning that game, but for an FCS team, they're not a pushover. Troy returns every player that recorded an offensive statistic a year ago on a 10-win team. And oh, by the way, in week 2 last year, Troy went to Clemson, and Clemson needed to recover an onside kick with a minute left to win that game. So, and then there's Syracuse. Syracuse returns more starters, 20, than any program in college football this year. So look, I get why you're going to look at those 4 games and say, oh, pushover. And LSU should win every one of them because they're better than all of those teams. But if you sleepwalk through any of those games, any one of those teams can trip you up in embarrassing fashion. So nobody's going to talk about LSU's non-conference, and I understand it because there isn't that Alabama, Florida State, Florida, Michigan game on there. But they're all tough. And the other part about the conference schedule, which you're absolutely right, LSU's rotating cross-divisional. Last year, Missouri, who was dreadful, came to Baton Rouge. This year, Missouri's off, and a trip to Tennessee in November rotates on. So whereas that second to last week of the regular season, when most schools are prepping for a rivalry game and they have that layup non-conference, it's a terrible weekend of college football traditionally. LSU's going to Tennessee that weekend. And you play 5 road conference games because of the Florida Hurricane Matthew debacle last year. I may like LSU and their talent and all that stuff, but and I've said this before, Mark, and people like in Baton Rouge look at me with a cross eye. If Ed Orgeron manages 10 wins with a team that's losing 8 defensive starters and everything running back in Leonard Fournette, your top 2 wide receivers, and your very best offensive lineman, if he manages 10 wins against this schedule, replacing what he lost, that is a remarkable debut season for Ed Orgeron.